Okay, looks good. Looks good. A1, can you hear me? Fantastic. I'm in. I'm recording. It is recording. Giuseppe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. The Batman has struck again.
Yeah. I don't know why you were joining as a participant, but now you're a panelist.
I can see that, yeah.
Fantastic. And I can hear you well. I also got a
Good.
haircut for the webinar.
I saw that you look very handsome.
Thank you. Thank you. Some
Yeah.
say I look like Jason Statham.
Actually, now that you mention it, you do. And, my congratulations to you. Now, all you have to do is, does your wife look like Rosie Huntington?
Oh, she looks better.
Wow. Okay, well, then you really are the Batman. So,
Fantastic,
so,
fantastic.
so listen, so what I thought I'd do is that at the introduction, I'll do a little bit of the introduction in Italian. And
Sure.
then when we start to talk about the three different topic areas, then we'll switch to English. But I'll tell the audience, I'll tell the video. I don't know how many people are registered. There weren't that many yesterday. There may be a few more today. But what I'll do is I'll start off saying, good morning. We're here to discuss this. Thanks for being here. Today I had with me Boaz Barcel, Field CTO of Ox Security, who's a leader in the field of ASPM. And then I'll introduce myself, and then I'll say this is the agenda for today. This is what we're going to talk about. But first, before we start that, let me do a little bit of an introduction of the background of why this is important. And I'll take that little piece that you wrote in English, about
Mhm.
Italy being a microcosm, and I'll use that, and I'll say that's the introduction. Now let's switch over to English, and then I'll ask you a question about some what's happening in the real world.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
And
good.
then we'll switch to English, and then we'll just go. Okay. So I've got a little agenda. I don't know whether I need to show that. Um,
So technically, you can share. I can also allow you to share in this case.
well, thank you.
Share screen option. Um, you should be able to share,
Okay. Yes.
right?
Uh, Share. Yeah. The green button is gone. Send request. Yes.
Allow. And if you want to share something, you can.
Okay. So what I'm going to share is basically this. Can you see that?
I don't see anything.
Okay. Well, that means I haven't shared it correctly. Share. Okay.
Yeah, we can see it. Very good.
Okay. So it's just today's agenda, introduction, and then we're going to do chaos to control the discussion, then Q&A, and then a close. Okay. At the end of it, I've got your email address, my email address, our logos. Thank you. That's it. That's as much email, as much background as slides as I'm going to use. Now, do you
That's
control
good.
those slides? Or
You can control him.
okay, fine.
When we're talking, it's best we won't show the slides, but when you're doing kind of the introduction or everything, then you'll be able to share anytime.
Okay, does that mean that I have to stop sharing?
Yes.
Okay. So at the moment, we leave this on, and do we now go to the
So
go
we're
to the
at the time.
yeah?
We'll give one more minute for people to join, and then
Mhm.
we'll begin.
Okay.
Fantastic. Okay. I think we can start, Giuseppe.
Okay. Thanks, Boas. Ehm, Buongiorno a tutti, grazie per essere riuniti con noi oggi per discutere l'application security posture management e la realtà della supply chain di software in Italia. Ehm, Oggi ho con me Boaz Parcel, che è il field CTO dell'Ox Security, che è un leader nel campo della ASPM. E per chi non mi conoscesse, il mio nome è Giuseppe Rossi e sono un partner di BridgeDT. Noi siamo un'organizzazione specializzata in software e consulenza intorno alla sicurezza e l'integrazione e siamo i distributori locali della Ox Security. Oggi ci chiediamo come possono le organizzazioni italiane passare dal caos reattivo al controllo proattivo. Nell'agenda di oggi tratterremo tre temi principali: la violazione reale e lacune nella sicurezza delle applicazioni, di trasformare la realtà DevSecOps da un buzzword in esecuzione e di dominare la SPM, cioè di dare una visione unica per governare la SDLC e di domare il sovraccarico di rischio. Il formato di questo webinar sarà il seguente. Inizieremo prendendomi un po' di tempo per delineare alcune delle problematiche che riscontriamo ogni giorno qui in Italia. Questa parte sarà in italiano. Passerò poi in inglese per aprire la discussione con Boaz e avere un controllo fluido e aperto, un confronto, scusami, fluido e aperto con lui, coprendo le tre aree tematiche menzionate in precedenza. Questa parte dovrebbe durare circa 30 minuti. Non esitare a farci sapere se avete una domanda utilizzando il chat del webinar. Dopo aver trattato i tre argomenti ci sarà una sessione di Q&A e prima di chiudere la sessione lasceremo le nostre email di contatto e forniremo istruzioni come di ottenere l'offerta early bird di quale è stato menzionato nel tutta la comunicazione precedente a questo webinar. Solo per farvi vedere, lì c'è introduzione e contesto, dal chaos controllo, discussione, Q&A e poi close. Bene, io smetto di sharare che ci permette di vedermi e adesso faccio un piccolo discorso riguardo all'Italia. Italia sembra di aver diventato una sorprendente microcosmo della sfida globale della cyber security. Noi stiamo parlando non stiamo parlando solo di email e phishing e attacchi di brute force, è sistemico. Le intere infrastrutture, dagli aeroporti italiani alle istituzioni finanziarie, sono state interrotte da software mal configurati o con dipendenze non patchate e ambienti CI/CD vulnerabili. Molte aziende si stanno svegliando alla brutale realtà di ransomware, fughe dei dati massicce, logistica paralizzata e panico nel consiglio di amministrazione. Pensate ai giornalisti investigativi presi di mira da spyware a livello statale attraverso backdoor in app apparentemente sicuro. Ma guarda che Italia è leggermente diverso dagli altri paesi, perché in Italia ci sono delle obbligazioni per industrie essenziali che devono avere la capacità di fare il code review e questo già dovrebbe darci un vantaggio, però non è proprio il caso perché le aziende non sono ancora attrezzate in modo dove possono avere una visibilità totale di tutto quello che succede nel contesto della loro infrastruttura e il supply chain del software. Cosa hanno in comune tutto questo? C'è una mancanza di visibilità, c'è una mancanza di coesione attraverso la lunghezza di questo supply chain. È una mancanza di fiducia nella supply chain del software proprio. Ecco perché siamo qui. L'ASPM non è un'altra parola d'ordine o una casella da controllo per il compliance. È la risposta di un mondo digitale in cui il software è costruito velocemente, aggiornato costantemente e sotto attacco incessantemente. Allora, vorremmo oggi offrirti la lente per vedere dove si trovano tutti i rischi reali, non solo cioè che dicono i tuoi strumenti, ma i veri rischi. A questo punto cambio lingua e vado in inglese e chiedo a Boes le prime delle mie domande. Eh, è una cosa che riguarda. Allora, okay, Boris, so I'm going to start now with you, and we're going to talk about real-world breaches of application security gaps. So I guess, what's the most misunderstood aspect of software supply chain security today? Where are the security teams putting their focus, and is that the right place?
Yeah,
Maybe you'd like to have a go on
that's a
this.
really good question. Before that, I have to say I understood about 85% of
Good.
everything you said in Italian, both because of the context and the fact that I studied Italian a little bit. So it was really, really great. And really from the perspective of really understanding, I would say kind of the misunderstanding or if I can take it really to an area where we're saying, listen, the first thing that I need to think about is the idea of application security, software supply chain, shift left. There's a few aspects and a few buzzwords and terms that are going on. And then when we're looking at them, there seems to be similar or different. And kind of the misunderstanding that you mentioned comes from the fact that, it's really a personal interpretation in that sense. So I really am thinking right now on the fact that when we're looking at the AppSec world, or we're talking about, I would say, real world cases in the security today, we can see different cases, especially in Italy, around supply chain attacks and software supply chain attacks. We can see cases even on ransomware attacks where the ransomware itself, it's not an application security, but the ransomware or the group that try to affect people with ransomware or companies with ransomware are actually using the vulnerabilities coming from the operating system, coming from the packages that you're bringing. So it has a direct link to that software supply chain. And what I'm seeing today is there's a lot of focus on first party code and less focus on dependencies, for example. So some of the misunderstood aspects in this case, I would say, starts from it's not just about the code you write. Okay, there's one level of that's the code you wrote. It's also about what you're pulling in because it will not just affect how vulnerable you are or the risk you are. It's also going to affect the vulnerability or your risk posture against different types of attacks. Specifically, we can see a rise of, in Italy, I saw a report by the ACN that really says that the number of attack and the percentage are actually doubled between 2023 to 2024. Okay, so, and we're talking about various types of attacks around software supply chain and IT services that are getting attacked. And through those services, they can attack other companies that are using those services. So we can see that in this case, it's not just about what you're bringing into your code, it's what are other services that are you using. So there's different aspects in here. So it's really not about thinking about, okay, let's have an SBOM, see all the packages that I have, and okay, now I got software supply chain security. Okay, this is just a list. Software supply chain security starts from visibility. And then once I have that visibility, I need to understand dependencies. I need to understand the vulnerabilities that are coming in, and then assuming that a vulnerability is a risk is also a misunderstanding. So overall, what we're seeing now is that there's multiple factors that we need to take into account, and we have to understand that we need to also look at the development environment. And this is really important because the developer's environment is also something that the attacker can compromise from the IDE to the services that they're using. So I have to understand kind of the posture elements that are relating to that. The second part of the question is, I think that if we're taking a shift or a focus a little bit, we're seeing that a lot of teams, it's not just about misunderstanding, it's also about the focus. A lot of teams are too focused on CVSS scores or generic vulnerabilities. And because of that, we're seeing that they're just rushing around trying to understand what a vulnerability is, triaging that for a few days, and they're not thinking about in the terms of risk, how is that a risk for me? What other risks do I have? How is it correlated with other things? And in the continuous of the conversation, we'll also provide a few best practices around it. So, um,
Well, I'm going to ask you about what happens when a breach happens with a third-party library or an open source package or something that's you know, uh, something that's wrong in the supply chain. And it comes to my mind, there's an example from end of last year, December last year, January this year, with InfoCert. InfoCert is like the secure ID provider for a lot of Italians, and it's they weren't hacked directly, but what happened was that one of their suppliers, the ticketing system, was compromised, and this led to an unauthorized publication of 5.5 million records of personal data was sold on the dark web. Now, InfoCert system itself wasn't compromised, but a supplier was, which was using information that was coming down the line. So what's I mean that's happened here in Italy. So it does happen, and it does happen in a large scale. That just happened to be one that came to mind for me just now. So when a breach happens, what goes wrong? I mean, how can we close that off or spot it more easily to understand these weak links before an attacker does?
that's a good question. The first thing is that we need to assume always, and we're always talking about in security, that a breach will happen. And everything we're doing from that perspective is understanding that when we're talking about a breach to our own applications, or we're talking about a breach to a third party, whether it's an open source that's got malware code inserted into it, or being used in an attack, or a third party that I'm using, a service that I'm using that being breached, and then they can really get into my environment because of that link. And usually we have less inspection around those that we trust. And zero trust is a whole different conversation here. So really
Right.
the fact that, when a breach happens, specifically to a third-party library, sometimes it's not the actual library that I'm using, it's actually a dependency. And we all know that open source projects are using other open source projects. So we're seeing that we're not just bringing one library, we can actually bring 5, 10, 20, 100. And each of those libraries is managed differently. So from that perspective, I would say that the first thing that we need to understand is that we don't necessarily have visibility directly to all the libraries on all the vulnerabilities. And the first thing that I need to do is really understand not just the direct dependencies, but the transitive dependencies, understand everything that's coming with them. Is it malicious code, the vulnerabilities themselves, the usage of that package, and there's other aspects. And from that perspective, really create the context around the usage of the package and its transitive in my environment. And I think that once I have a good understanding of that, I also understand the service and how the service work, and then I understand what can happen from a breach. So if my application or this service is breached, which other services are exposed? What is the role-based access that, or the actual access that this service has? Which other systems? What will happen in the case of, ownership? Who owns that service? I need to stop the service. I need to shut it down. It's not like I can just go to my router or switch and pull the cords.
The cord.
I can actually need to tell someone, shut down the service or block the service or do something. So when we're seeing that there is no clear of ownerships around it, it also affects remediation, but when something gets wrong, when I do have that ownership, I can be successful in remediation. Also, when there's an incident, I can respond to that incident and really pinpoint the person that needs to really fix it, or have that incident mitigated in such a way. Okay,
Right.
so the first thing is, not just the usage of the tools to detect the issues, but really to contextualize those issues in my environment, understand ownerships, what happens when a service is being breached, and preemptive, being preemptive or being proactive, if you want, is really the ability to say when this service talk to these other services, it doesn't have the ability to do everything. It can only do specific action based on what is needed. And this is how I can really mitigate what's happening in a breach, even from a third party that's getting breached.
Okay. Well, okay. So let's look at this from a different point of view now. Not only are there problems coming from external sources, we
Mm-hmm.
also have problems from misconfigurations and over-privileged access, etc. So, in terms of securing the organization's CI/CD pipelines, um, how do we how should we think about securing the CI/CD pipelines also from this problem of misconfiguration and over-privileged accesses?
Yes, that's a good question. So I think that the two areas of misconfiguration over privileged access, it's just us being humans and taking the easy road. And what the security team needs to do is it needs to help define the actual path that we need to take. So for misconfiguration is we understand that human makes errors. And that's good because once we understand that we're making error, then how do I check those errors? Which tools do I have that will allow me to see those misconfigurations? Okay, and I can set boundaries. So once I do set boundaries, for example, if I have an internet facing application, it's running on a container, and the container configuration allow a root user to be connected from the internet with no kind of any kind of guardrail. So assuming that I have the ability to connect, then I can connect, which is a problem. If security will say, okay, the only people that can connect are X, Y, Z, and they can only do specific items, then I'll be able to detect it and detect it even before the container is actually deployed or even through the infrastructure as code aspect. Really, regarding other misconfigurations, then we just need to understand that once they happen, we have the ability to understand them and to be able to focus on the one that actually matters and not just on everything because we'll have tons of misconfigurations. Some are bad, some are not that bad, some are okay. Sometimes I have a S3 bucket that's open to a read only as a public to the public. Okay,
Okay,
we want it
great.
like this. That's okay.
Okay, so let's move on to the topic area. Now I'm conscious of time. So the topic two that we want to discuss is really turning DevSecOps realities from buzzword into execution. So here, my first question is, it's about shift left. Shift
Yeah.
left sounds great in theory, but in practice, security findings tend to, pile up, and you have a whole list of things to do. So how do you actually get the dev teams to act on AppSec insights without creating a bottleneck?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that the when shift left movement started a few years back, it basically said, okay, we know that we're going to break stuff. Let's break them as early as possible so we can fix them before they get into production. Which by the concept is fantastic. But when you're taking that to security, a lot of places, what I'm seeing is that they're just taking the security alerts and sharing those with developers, which is kind of the wrong way to shift left. You can't just take all the vulnerabilities you have, throw them at the developers, and then expect them to fix that. Because on average, what we're seeing is an organization has about 570,000 issues, which means
Okay.
that if I throw that at developers, I'm gonna get a big no. We're not gonna do anything, and prioritize it. And to prioritize these many alerts, it's impossible. So If there's no context, there's no action. So the first thing that you need to do when you're shifting left beyond detection is really be able to prioritize, generate the context. And really from the bottleneck perspective, if you are already prioritizing and you are understanding what you want to fix, and you've talked with the CTO or VP of engineering and the DevOps groups, and you're telling them, listen, I need security time in every release. And they're saying, okay, you can do 5 issues. Then constantly you know what are the next 5 issues that you want to fix, which type of issues. You can also understand how much or how much time it takes on average to fix every issue. So you can might be, saying, okay, I'm going to give you 7, but these 5 are actually very easy to fix. So you'll be able to do it in that sense. So if you're sending them what is really matters and you have the evidence and the ability to show the impact that they will create, they will be happy to do it. They understand the importance of security. Okay, they don't want to do security because from their perspective, if everything works, it ain't broken, and if it ain't broken, I'm not going to fix it. So they want to understand I'm going to fix something that's working because someone else as an attacker can take advantage in that sense. So when we're shifting left, the first thing that I have to do is really the ability to focus on what is actually matters and then help the developers to understand why it is and being able also to shorten the time it takes them to solve it. Because eventually, if I can tell them, listen, this is what you need to do because of this, and this is the best method to solve it, then all the developer will have to do, today in the AI remediation is apply fix. There's this apply fix, do some sort of dead on arrival testing, send it to QA, QA done its own testing, and everything is fantastic. Sometimes it's more complicated, of course, but really that's the idea. So shift left just by detecting vulnerabilities and throw them at development, it won't work.
Right. So this is one of the issues that I hear very often when we're talking with dev teams and also with the security teams is their fatigue. They say, oh, we have so many issues that come up, how we just can't handle it. We need some way to prioritize it, and we need to have a logic that is holistic, and but they don't actually do it. So they don't actually have a way of doing that. They have point scoring systems, and there's a whole bunch of different things. Individual tools sometimes have their own prioritization capabilities. There's one of the issues they have is that there are so many tools, and they're providing so many sources of different security problems, but there's nothing that's saying this is the most important because this is the impact it's going to have, this is how vulnerable it is, this is how easy it will be for a hacker to use it. So we have a unified system of ranking everything. And I find that's when people that I'm talking to in businesses are starting to talk about the fatigue they're having to be able to manage all of the signals that are coming in. They don't have a prioritization system that's really effective across everything. So my question is, if we're talking about how do we turn this, we've got to turn the fatigue off and the prioritization on. How do we do that? What's a way of doing that that's going to involve everyone and make everyone see things the same way?
That's a very, very good point. And I feel that many people today are experiencing that, both from the security and the development side. The fatigue itself starts from the fact that you're seeing something that you know that you need to handle, but you're saying that's too big, it's too much, I can't handle that. Okay, it's
right.
Like convincing a small child to go and take a shower. For them, it seems like a big project. It takes a lot of time, but eventually, what you need to do is take off your clothes, get in the shower, open the water, put some soap, wash yourself, and put on the towel. It's very simple. It's very easy. Okay? So if you're breaking it into pieces, then it's easy. But in security or in AppSec, you actually need to do the vice versa. You need to collect all of those alerts to what we call ASPM, so a posture management tool that can also generate context from the environment and then tell you exactly, you can see all those alerts from across your pipelines are actually coming from the same source. So it's the same alert. And then once you consolidate all the tools, and you can also ensure security coverage, you can ensure that everybody has the same baseline coverage Not every team is doing whatever they want. You're removing the duplications, aggregating the results, and then you can start saying, listen, if all of these issues coming from this source and all those other issues are also relating to this source, what I need to do to fix this source is something like, let's say upgrading a package. So I have multiple packages, same type of package on the same application. There's different type of dependencies. I'm kind of correlating everything, collecting everything. And then once I'm able to pinpoint, this is the source, this is what I need to do, this is what I share with development. So basically what development sees is a single issue, one thing that they need to fix. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of other issues that will be fixed alongside with that same thing instead of opening multiple tickets. So when you have those siloed visibilities or siloed tools, you will end up seeing one issue in a certain place that seems critical, another tool that says, that's not really critical, another tool that doesn't see it at all. So you're kind of, scrapping data from multiple tools for a few days. But when you do have, consolidation, ASPM aspect with the context of your environment, with the ability to understand reachability, exploitability, and impact in your environment automatically, you immediately close all the different gaps. You're going to see and focus on issues that are actually reachable, exploitable, and impactful for you, and you can prove it. And from that point, you can shut down the alert fatigue. And it really is about reducing prioritization. Okay, it's not the other way around. So what we're seeing when we're analyzing, we've analyzed more than 200 organizations, and what we found is the problem with alerts is that a lot of them seems to be critical, but after you do the triage, very few are actually critical. The others are kind of down the list. And once you have that, you have the ability to say, okay, I understand the risk. I understand what I need to do. I have something that I can share with development. They're not going to shout back at me. It's too much. I don't know what to do with it. It's not really impactful. And then I can start, driving my AppSec program kind of into the next level.
All right, okay. We sort of drifted a little bit into now mastering ASPM
Yeah.
and one view rule. I have just one question, which is maybe can help some of the people who are listening to the webinar. And that's, what are some signs that a DevSecOps program is failing to deliver real security outcomes? So what I'm trying to do is give some of the people who might be listening, hey, if you see this or you have this happening, there's a problem that you really do need to have a look at and be careful. It's just sort of qualification issues about, you might have a mature process on paper, but in reality, when things are really happening in the wild, like they say, it's not really happening. So what things pop up and show that there's show signs that a DevSecOps program is failing?
That's a good question. I would start, there's actually 2 points for this. The first point is something that really I read about for the Italian market is I understood that from different compliance framework, like let's say NIS2 and others, there's actual rules or laws that were now a mandatory aspect of the Italian law that Italian companies have to abide by, which is a good first step. It's not maturity per se, but if you're looking at what you need to do based on the law. And the next part is you're saying, okay, I don't want to just check a box because eventually what will happen is that it won't work internally. And even if I have what looks to be a mature DevOps program or DevSecOps program, I'll give an example. We have a security dashboard and a report. Everybody looks in it. It looks impressive. There's a lot of graphs. But when we're looking at the trends, we understand that it doesn't actually go down. So we're seeing an opposite trend. So the risks actually go up. So even though we can report on everything and we have KPIs and we're measuring everything, the actual outcome that we want doesn't happen. So this is one sign where, we're thinking that we're working, but overall, it's like the story of the child that was yelling at the king that he's naked. I don't remember the name of the play, but the
Yeah.
same thing. Everybody looks at it and seeing beautiful reports and everything is working and we have maturity, but someone says, but the risk keeps going up. Something is broken. Something doesn't work. So we can see backlogs, a lot of tickets moving hands from one team to another. They're not really getting solved, they're just being moved along, and critical issues are found by pen testers at runtime, and we're struggling to fix them. So it's really an important exercise, but I can tell you that at least 90 to 95% of critical issues that you'll see in runtime, you can actually fix before that. Save the risk, save the cost, make it easier, show the trends and show the AppSec program success. So really from that perspective, this is another sign where we rely too much on runtime and testing results and not enough on fixing something before it really reaches production or even blocking the pipeline in some cases. When we see developers, they're bypassing security controls. Okay, we want you to have, say, an inspection in the PR. And we constantly see developers are asking to bypass, or they're bypassing themselves because all my developers are administrators and something like that, so they
Right,
can do
right.
whatever they want. So these are kind of the signs that even though I have a mature program, eventually, the program itself doesn't really work. And it also comes down to there's 7, 8, 10 tools, even more. The tools themselves doesn't create maturity. Okay, it's really something that we need to improve. And if I'll talk about the other way, if you want, I'll talk about so how do we improve it.
Right, right. That was going to be my next question. If you find this situation, what advice would you be giving to companies, to ensure that they're looking at the solutions and the right capabilities? So, what are the must-have capabilities that you would be looking for?
So the first thing is not actually a tool related or a technology, it's actually people's related. The triangle of or a Venn diagram of people, technology, and process. People are a given. They're already there. Okay, we need to have channels open. We need to understand what they care about, how they measure success. And I'm talking from a security perspective who's talking to developers. When I'm speaking with developers, eventually what will happen is they have their own KPIs, their own measurements, their own things. Okay, they don't really care about security measurements. So I have to start talking with the managers, with the people that are leading them, and ensuring that security is part of that measurement, and we're getting into some sort of a collaboration, which means, first of all, we need to build in ownership. So this is really the first thing. The next thing is really we need to match technology. We can't just share alerts or, this is a critical issue just because. And then I'll get a lot of false positive backs for developers that are saying, we can't fix it. We don't want to fix it. It's not really important. We're not using that package anymore. There's all different stuff. There's different areas that from a technology perspective, I need a technology that will help me gather focus and context from my environment to collect, like ASPM, collect all the types of information across the pipeline and start to show me the actual critical risks and what do I need to do in order to solve them. So really shorten down everything to a point that says, and it's a continuous point, it's not a point in time, that says these are the next critical risk that you'll need to fix in the next sprint. This is what I want. Okay, this is what the security team wants. This is what the developer wants. Once we have that, then we can start taking those insights and integrate them into the workflow. And we're saying, okay, we're already doing code reviews. So
Mhm.
if I'll build a security champion program, take a few of those developers that are highly rated or more expert in their areas and tell them, listen, as part of the code reviews, these are the checklist that I want you to have. If you're doing an input, if there's a user input, let's do a user validation. Let's create allow lists. If you're doing a service, if services are communicating between each other, let's ensure that they only expose the relevant information. So output validation, role-based access, the big things. Once we have that, we can start seeing a lot of the major issues are being downgraded into, medium, low, sometimes even resolved even before it really gets into the production. In other places, when we talked about breaches, really, when we have that kind of control from or kind of process, we are already mitigating the effects of a breach. So once we have that, we have the ownership, we have the technology, we have the process, the relevant process in place, and we're taking kind of the right step, we immediately have the ability to mature our security or AppSec program in the fact that now I can start building more controls. For example, I can build, once I have that in place, I can build a security control pre-deployment and query to understand if the container that I want to deploy has critical issues. Because I understand that if they are marked as critical, they're already prioritized with reachability, exploitability, and impact. So I can trust that. I know that it's not gonna, on every container gonna pop up a lot of alerts and nothing will get deployed on time. So I think this is really the three steps that I would suggest every company to start thinking of, and how to do it.
Okay, well, that's great. We've got 2 minutes to go before we're out of our discussion time, and then we'll open up for questions. So just to give you a chance to talk about Ox. So how would you, using Ox, how would you go about resolving some of these fatigue issues or prioritization issues? What does Ox do?
That's a very good question because what Ox does is actually everything that I talked about is something that we are helping customers to do. So really from the beginning, when you connect Ox, the connection itself is agent and seamless. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to change your workflows. It's a big mistake to start changing the development workflows because of security, unless you already have a mature program and you're agreeing to make changes in the workflows, because otherwise it won't happen. So you connect to the same environment, to the same workflows, to the source control, CI/CD, registry, to the cloud. We're covering the entire security aspect, so you don't really need third-party tools, but you can connect third-party tools. And really, what Ox will do, the first thing, it will gather all the information, normalize the data, and then it will build you that focused or prioritized list. Aggregation, deduplication, it will collect context and unique evidence from your environment, and then we'll be able to build those risk or critical risk for you, and also help you pinpoint what to fix in the next sprint. What are the critical risk trends? I can show you, for example, based on application, based on team or project, what are the critical risks for each one of them. If there's any kind of items that are repeating themselves, if I want a training program, I want the training program to be specified to the team or project based on what their most critical risks are, or a repetitive risk that keeps coming up. So we can show that and we can provide it. And then once you have that confidence, and of course our mapping of the entire attack flow, and we can show and pinpoint and consolidate and help you with a single fix and remediation guidance. But what you can really do is start integrating into the pipeline, not just in the IDE, but really in the PR level, in the container level. So you have those quality gates that you can inspect and very granularly block the pipeline on what you define together with R&D. What are the critical issues for the company? What are the major risks? And then you can start blocking them. And you can also show the developer in the IDE what will get blocked in the PR. So it really is amazing, because then they'll see, oh, this part of code that I just created will get blocked. So I can fix it at the commit level even before it gets to the PR. And I'll see all the recommendations from that. So it really is building security into the flows of the company. It doesn't really matter which environment or which flow. And that's really the power here, because as an ASPM, we can connect to any security tool, any environment, ticketing, messaging, it doesn't matter. And we're constantly expanding our connectors list, which really helps company to say, okay, just connect to my environment, show me the exact items. I can help them, of course, build the reports on each team, on trends, and so on. But again, to show that the actual decrease in risk By the way,
Mhm.
one result that you'll see immediately is that we're reducing the alert fatigue by more than 97, sometimes 98%, and the security debt by 87%, according to studies that we've done. So really the amazing things that you immediately start to see that focus just by connecting Ox. And I think that's the one of the greatest values that you can get.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, boss. Um, I think we've covered a lot of areas, a lot of ground there. So what I would do, I would ask if there's any questions that are coming through on the chat. Maybe, boys, if you can have a look at see if
Let
the
me take
chat.
a look. Let's look at the chat. Do we have a Q&A? Here we go. Okay. I don't see any questions in the chat, also in the Q&A, but I do feel that, if there's are additional questions, or I think that, people that will watch it even after the webinar, they'll probably want to understand more. So I really suggest maybe Giuseppe, you'll talk about, the way of communication,
Sure,
how they
sure.
can contact.
Right. Let me just put up some share some slides. Um, so we discussed this is the agenda that we went through today. So we discussed the various different topics of from chaos to control and the Q&A. So just before we go, I think that it's important that we leave you our contacts. Now, for those people who registered, we will get back to you. We made certain offers to people, depending on whether you're a system integrator or whether you're a prospective client. That we can do some proof of concept demos, etc. Reduction of security debt exercises with you. If you're registered, we will follow up with using the email that you registered with. If you haven't registered, then you can send a message to myself, and there's my email address. It's giuseppe.rossi@bridgeidt.com. Or you can contact Boaz directly, and that's boaz@ox.security. If you need any other information, about what ASPM is, how Ox handles ASPM, and if you want to do that in local language, you can get hold of me, or you can get hold of Boaz directly at those email addresses. They're our business emails, so we'd be happy to respond to you. If there are no more questions, I'd like to thank Boaz for his time and having this first discussion. I know ASPM is a topic that's coming up fairly regularly. I know that there are a number of Italian companies who, by the type of industry that they're in, are required to have code review teams. And I also understand that a lot of those type of companies are looking at how do I reduce the noise in terms of the security messages that we're getting, and how do I better integrate with my development colleagues? And we're doing a lot of those discussions together with Ox, and it seems to me that Italy is right on the verge of really requiring this type of capability to be able to respond not only to the needs of the company and the commercial needs of the company, but also to the legislation that's come out, whether it's NIS2, whether it's DORA or GDPR, or all the new Data Act. So this is a full blown service that can help support both senior level management, board level management, senior level management, and the development and security teams. So we'd be more than happy to spend time with any one of you who would like to know more, and also offer you some free services around doing a proof of concept, or doing a session with you to help you understand how you can reduce your security debt. Thank you very much for your time. I think you have all of the information that you need to get in contact with us, and we hope to speak to you soon.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, Giuseppe.
Thank you, boss. Okay.
Bye-bye.